Hello, hello. Hi Sasha. Hey Tariq. How's it going? How's everybody doing? Yo, yo. I'm just waiting.
Hi.
Hello. Good evening.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good, good. As good as it can be, I guess.
As as good as it can be. How's your day been? What have you been up to?
Well, I've been doing a lot of things for my own mental health, right? Because you got to practice what you preach, right? So I've been getting really like in tune to what I have to do. So lots of yoga, a lot of eating healthy, right? Because believe it or not, eating healthy really helps, right?
You're gonna teach me a thing or two. You're gonna teach me a thing or two today for sure.
That's
No, it's
true.
awesome though.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
and
Chanel, go ahead, sorry.
no, no, no worries. Yeah, it's just a bunch of different things that, I do to keep my mojo going so that, I can like show up when people need me to show up for them, if that makes sense.
Amazing. I mean, oh, definitely, definitely. Makes complete sense. So let's get started. Chanel, thank you so much for making the time to come today. I am honored to have you. Yasudhara was the one who introduced your profile to me and was just like, you need to have her on. I was just like, okay.
That's
But
my girl.
Chanel,
Yeah, we're all like,
it's going to be fun getting to know you and where you come from. But for the people who don't know, Chanel is a licensed clinical psychologist, but she's also a wellness manager. I won't name firms here. It's up to you whether you want to name firms or not. But Chanel, tell us all about you. What do you do? Why are you a psychologist?
wow. Yeah, that's a good question. So I think it started very early on because I realized that school was very kind of mundane, if that makes sense. Like, if you look at our curriculum, it's very generic. It's about, learning about all these dead guys, that lived thousands of years ago, learning about these formulas that maybe we'll use, maybe we'll not. So it doesn't really teach you like different stuff, that's kind of alternative. So I've always been very interested in the human psyche, because let's face it, if you figure out your mind, you can basically figure out a lot of shit, right, in life, because your mind drives you. So luckily I was at Ladies, and at the time when we were just figuring out our London A-level focus, psychology was one of the offerings. So I was like super excited because it's as alternative as you can get, right? Because otherwise my options were become a lawyer because your parents want you to, or like, a doctor because like that's the smart thing to do,
You're
right?
preaching to the choir.
Right? I'm sure you know this, right? Most of us millennials have gone through this at one point or the other, right? Do we follow our passion, or do we follow the generic like thing that makes money and gives you that status, right? So one thing led to another, and I was always like into like being in the US for some reason. I think we all go through that obsession with the US at some point. And so I got a job in the States, and then I went to college, did my master, did my postgrad, did my licensing, everything, and focused on clinical psych, which is basically understanding mental health and helping interventions in a clinical setting, right? And so a lot of people don't understand the difference between clinical psychologist and psychiatrist and counselor. They're all kind of different, but kind of the same. Psychiatrists usually prescribe. So clinical psychologists don't usually prescribe medication. We are more interested in intervention, through talk therapy, that kind of stuff. So one thing led to another. I almost settled down there. Then, I decided to like move up and come back here because of my grandpa. And then I started working at a certain apparel company, right? And because I've also had some focus in fashion as well. So I worked for Abercrombie in the States. Then I worked to a leading conglomerate here, not conglomerate, but apparel company here. And then I kind of stumbled upon this amazing opportunity by accident, by the way. So this is how you know that there's something in the universe that works in a way I can't explain, okay? Not even science can explain it, okay, that well. And I was called into an interview at Hemas. Hemas is completely fine with me sharing their information. Don't worry, they love getting credit, street cred. Okay, they're good with that. And
That's good.
yeah, it is. Yeah, because they want to be known for helping people, right? That's what their value proposition is. It's to help help the community that we're in, so that we make the country a better place. And so my boss, Murtaza, he's very supportive. He really wants like girls to like be the future and kind of change the world, and you know, all this like really cool stuff that I'd never thought that in Sri Lanka a company would be focusing on stuff like that. But Hemas was way ahead of the game. And luckily he said, you know, there's this crazy project. We don't know whether it's going to work, but what do you think? You're a psychologist. You might understand things better. Why don't you take it on? And I was like, okay, fine. And it just happened. And then 5 years running, almost 5 years. So
oh, wow. That was 5 years ago.
I know.
And I want to touch on like what your journey was in the 5 years. But before I touch on to that, I want to ask a question that's literally burning in my head, and I want to get it out of the way. Obviously, I'm a mental health advocate because I've been through suicidal tendencies and also attempts. And I've gone through therapy for the past 1.5 years. I've been an open book because that's what my mom has taught me as well. She's never held me back from talk because she spoke about herself, right? She's been through domestic abuse, never held back in the conversation. She's been laid off multiple jobs, and that was a big trauma in her life as well. And she went through the whole glass ceiling effect, all of those things. So she was very open book. So me growing up with such an open book, I was just like, I'm going to be an open book too. And I was just like, you know what? I just want to help other people in terms of relatability and breaking taboo. So I want to ask, in Australia, mental health, using the term mental health is fine. Using the term therapy, seeking help, reaching out, all those things are fine. But in corporates, what I've seen is, I've seen what O-doctors, I've seen what different institutions do. They coined the term from mental health to wellness or mental well-being or mindfulness. They coined the term separately so it doesn't seem that taboo of a topic. And my question to you is it working?
Okay, so that's a very good question. Here's the thing. Words limit ourselves, right? Words are a creation by human beings to make sense of, you know, how we live our lives, how we operate, because it's very complex. As you can imagine, there are a lot of things out there that we can't explain. So in order to explain them, we create things like mindfulness, right? So nowadays there's a huge debate in the mental health mindfulness area, where they're saying, you know, why call it mindful when you're trying to escape your mind? Like that's bad, right? Because you're saying, no, don't think too much, observe your thoughts, right? But instead you're saying mindful, which means you're having a lot of thoughts in your head. So
it's a literal term.
Semantics, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
words
semantics.
are very limiting, and you can never really 100% get it right, because it's created by human beings. I mean, if you look at the British language, there are so many words that repeat themselves over and over again and make no real sense, right? But because we're used to it, we will use it. And because it becomes trendy, we will use that, right? I mean, if you look at hashtags now, like everyone says hashtag, you know, FML or whatever, right? It's new part of a way we communicate. So to answer your question, I would say yes and no, depending on the context, right? So now if you look at, say, white collar workers and people that are like really engaged in wellness and stuff, they are the kind of people that they would sort of resonate towards mental well-being or wellness, right? But for others who are not very familiar with mental health, you might have to use something a bit more generic. So say wellness or health, overall health or holistic. So for example, our wellness initiative at Hemas, we branded it as Hemas Wellness, Mage Soya, Mage Saputa. So the wellness word might have been a little weird, right, for our blue collar. But because we put in that Singhali segment, he said, Mage Swaya, Mage Sas. That means my health, my happiness.
It's more inclusive.
Exactly. So as long as you know who you're working with, it just depends. Different people resonate with different wording, right? I personally like wellness because it's kind of holistic. So because here's the theory behind wellness ideology, right? It encompasses all dimensions and areas of life. So that is physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional. So it's not just one thing. So a lot of the time when you say wellness, what do people think of? Fitness, right? Fitness is like the thing that everyone can relate to. And it's like go to the gym, you know, it's kind of workout. Like everyone's into that. Like at least they're into that concept, right? But that's only one part of health. That's only one part of wellness. There's a huge psychological part, as you know, right? If your mind is not going too well, your body might not function too well either. And then your spiritual health, your emotional health are all affected. So I personally like wellness and well-being, but I think you need to look at your context. So for Hemas, I think we were ready. We were ready to use words like mental well-being, mindfulness program. So we kind of go to the mindfulness program. So we have different programs in each area. So I think but I will say being aware and conscious like you are about the wording is good. Because then you go into it, right? Understanding that, you know, words could be limiting, right? Everything is limiting. So
Absolutely.
just accepting that and working with what you've got. And as long as your intention is pure, I think you can work with any word, to be honest.
Exactly. And what you said at the end, right? Like having a workaround with the intentions being pure is the main thing, because I think obviously there are people like myself and people, obviously other people out there who are advocates for it, who are making it relatable, right? Speaking like pure like wordings that make it more relatable and break the stigma. But it's also good from a corporate sector or from like, for example, from Hema's point of view, it's also good to at least bridge that gap, because we're just going full frontal with all the wordings and all of those things. But you guys are bridging that gap, normalizing it, saying, okay, this is quite a taboo topic, but we're bridging the gap by letting you guys come over by using certain terminologies, which is helping as well, which is awesome. I agree with that as well. You're going to say something, yeah?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Like, that's the thing. See, it's the narrative, right? So now we use words to say mental health and, you know, wellness and physical health, right? Why do we use words? So we can communicate, right? As you said, bridge the gap. So how do we bridge our gap? We have to use various modes of communication. One way is words. You have to be very careful with words, as we all know. But there are creative ways. So like, for example, you do a video, right? Or you have an expert come in there and talk about mental health and why it matters, and get people to understand what your intention is. If you just go in there saying, yeah, mental health, now everyone will be like, like,
yeah.
Obviously, right?
Yeah.
Like that. Like that's the first reaction.
That's the trigger. That's the trigger, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Trigger, right? So you have to be careful. As long as your intention is to educate and not exploit, and you must come from a place where you're not trying to control people and get to know their mental health and freak out, right? And so that you can...
Absolutely.
A lot of people think that you're trying to label them, right? So that fear of being labeled, we need to make sure that, you know what, we're not going to label you. We're just trying to figure out how you're doing so we can help you.
Absolutely. Because the thing is, like you said, it's a scary topic. Plus, because we're so used to seeing everything highly physical or biological, right? In the sense where, here's what someone told me very interesting, right? If you break a bone, what do you do with it? You go and get it checked. Just like that, if you're not in a good emotional state, you get it checked. But we're still not there, which is branching me to my next question. So I learned more about my mental health when I came to Australia, which was about 1 year and 8 months ago. But you've been in the Sri Lankan mental health and psychological scene for the past 5 years. I'd love to get your insight of how it's changed. Are we taking the necessary strides to make more change happen? Tell me all about it. Tell me what you think it is. Tell me where the shortcomings are, because it's very interesting for me to know as well, to see, because when I came back in Sri Lanka in January and December, I did a lot of research. So I attended support groups. I not interviewed, but met with a lot of psychologists within the scene.
Yeah.
Researched about Shanti Maragam and Sumitrio and all of those places. And I identified a few loopholes and gaps that are happening in the market. That's because it's such a taboo topic and nobody wants to get into that right now. It's why ODOC went from B2C to B2B, because they weren't getting their customers on board. So I want to know what your journey has been in 5 years, and how far has mental health as a conversation come, and what more can we do?
Fabulous. I love that question. So I think in terms of the state of mental health, when I first got here, like 5 years ago, back from the US, it was so primitive, right? It was like, I mean, we just had no idea where we were going. And even to this day, mental health, there's no proper process, no? Like in the US, we have the APA, the American Psychological Association, which basically governs everything to do with psychologists and mental health advocates, right? And there are programs and training programs that you can partake in if you want to be a part of that, right? Here, we don't really have a system like that. Even Britain has, Australia has, every Western country, and I'm sure even India does, and India has, right? They're standard for psychologists and mental health, right? We do not. We are governed by the SLMC, Sri Lanka Medical Council, right? And the thing is, a lot of the people that, you know, have the qualifications, who really want to do something, it's very hard for them to get that, because there's no actual degree available in the country. There's an MPhil, I think Columbia Uni offers it, but it's an MPhil in philosophy. It's not psychology, so it's like a sub thing. So it's obvious that there's no major focus on it. I suspect it's because of the cultural issue there with stigma and, you know, all these things. And if you have a problem, why do you have to go to a professional? Go and talk to your neighbor, will you? Go and talk to your friend, will you? Like that. So that attitude is there. But it is changing. I can see that it is. If you look at now, individuals like yourself, right? A lot of people are now understanding, especially the ones that gone abroad, and we've seen what it's actually like, right? You get inspired by that, and you want to come back and you want to bring some of that, because you know it's powerful. You know that you need to talk about it. And when you look at the landscape of mental health in Sri Lanka, we definitely are not in a good place. Suicide rates are extremely high. Alcoholism is extremely high. Absolutely. I mean, we are a mess when you think about it mentally. But so is the rest of the world. But the rest of the world, a lot of the places have certain systems ready for mental health advocates and to deal with the problem. We are still just getting there. So the Ministry of Health has come up with a huge policy about how to initiate programs for mental health awareness. They're asking for counselors, right? But they can't get. Why? Because a lot of counselors don't get paid, because the demand is really low for that kind of intervention.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's your dilemma. Even though it's improving because of the awareness, this is why social media can be very powerful. As a psychologist and as a mental health professional, we kind of criticize social media a lot, because there's a lot of, it goes under heat for a lot of stuff, right? Because of the self-esteem stuff, the social connection thing where, oh, you're just distracted by your phone, right? You're not paying attention to your person, right? But the fact is, it can be used as a tool, just like anything in life, right? Anything can be used for good or bad, no? So social media has sort of helped that, you know, people understand that mental health needs to be talked about. Mental health is actually fundamental when you think about it, because the rest of the world gets it. It's the number one priority for everybody, everywhere now. Because depression, did you know that depression is the number one disability in the world?
Yeah.
Did you know that? It's the number one. How can we overlook something that's the number one disability in the world? If we're looking at cancer, right? If we're looking at cancer and saying cancer is really problematic, heart disease is terrible, obviously, right? All these things, diabetes is on the rise. Okay, but then what about depression? What about anxiety? What about alcohol addiction, right? And it's important to say, hi, Yashodhara is here. And, just we have to understand that it is not something to be ashamed. This culture of shame, John, is just like ridiculous. We have such shame about mental health, right? And like as if anyone has it all together. I mean, that's the other thing, ego, right? We do not have it all figured out. So I think the landscape is changing, and the more people talk about it like this, right, the more conversations we have, the more we start not exploiting that space. Like sometimes even health professionals, they're very attached to their area, like they don't want to share and they don't want to collab. That's really bad. That's not healthy. Like,
Absolutely.
we all have to work together. The reason why I came this far is because of the support of psychiatrists. So many psychiatrists helped me out, right? They talked about me, they sent me clients, they connected me with people. It's building an ecosystem of health. So this is what Sweden and those Nordic countries get really well, right? They do this really well, where they connect everyone so that we are all in this together. It's not about, I'm the best psychologist in the world, like, and like you are the best physician. No, we all need to get better at what we do. And how do you get better at what we do? By talking to each other, by helping each other out, by specializing in certain things, and so I'm very hopeful that, especially with this Corona thing, oh my God, the kind of traction mental health has gotten, right? Like,
I'm just
amazing.
in my head. I'm just like, I've been talking this for 1 year and 8 months, and a pandemic has to happen for like people to like really take this to heart.
Exactly what I was talking about the other day at the meeting. I was saying, oh my God, how funny that it had to take a pandemic to get people to realize that health should be number one priority anyway. And mental health is a huge part of it, because people are suffering from anxiety. They're suffering from, domestic violence. Like, what happens to domestic violence victims, right? I was talking about this to your further also. Like the whole like implication of safety, right? So if we had been talking about mental health in the first place, we won't have to be worrying about it so much. We would have had the systems ready. But in order to help the Ministry of Health, in order to help the WHO, in order to help psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors, life coaches, whatever, right? People in that ecosystem needs to be strengthened. So we, in a way, we need to bring attention to it. So people like you are doing that. Thank you, and that's...
No worries.
And we're trying to do that at HEMAS, we're trying to sort of say, what? We're an award-winning program. AIA has recognized us recently. So has JETRO, right? Japanese External Trade Organization. So we have these amazing programs in the country. We're already achieving so much as a country. Why not make it easy for our citizens, right? And it starts with taboo. People need to start creating wellness champions all around the country, not just in HEMAS and, in our households, right? It needs to be a national crisis, and it should be number one priority. Besides Corona, I would say. Now, if Corona becomes the new normal, that means anxiety is the new normal. That means depression is the new normal. It's very much tied into that. So you can't have physical health without your mental health. You can't. We've been saying this for so long.
It's interconnected.
It is. You have to focus on both. Otherwise, if one area is neglected, the other area is going to suffer.
Absolutely.
So we were in a very primitive place, but what's funny? Our ancestors weren't, Back in the day, right? Who invented Ayurveda, right? Who invented yoga? Indians invented yoga, right? Now I know the West, in LA, I can't go anywhere without a yoga studio, okay? It's really ridiculous. It's really funny, okay? And it's all about like the ashrams and like all the poses. And I'm just like, oh my God, like this is an Eastern concept, right? And now the Westerners have taken it because they see that, oh my God, you know what? This is where it's at. This is so important. And we are like now only slowly kind of getting into it. Why? Because it's trendy, right? But it's the most basic thing. When you think about it, mental health is not a trendy thing. It's a basic thing. It's like eating healthy. Eating healthy shouldn't be a trend. It's a matter of life and death. You know what
Absolutely.
I mean?
Oh, no, for sure.
So that's where it's at. We were very primitive. We got a little better. And in 5 years, because of individual situations like HEMAS Wellness, all the advocacy done by Ministry of Health, and because this trend is catching on about counseling and talking about it and mental health advocates, I think there is more traction, but it's still largely Colombo oriented. Have you noticed that? Like it's
Yeah,
mainly,
that's one of my other questions. Like
yeah,
that's where I'm struggling most as well, because my content is all English content, but there's a lot of people, especially in rural areas, who don't even have access to technology, who don't know that these things that are affecting them are causing such mental health. So some of the things that you touched on, I'd like to reflect on as well. Like for example, like the domestic abuse, like for children and women out there, and maybe men as well, we don't have the exact statistics, are going up and up and up because of
yeah,
this. So my mom was abused for 5 years, and she has a lot of trauma that she didn't deal with, right? Because she didn't understand how it was,
how
because
would
all
she?
cultural stigmas and norms, you know. But like she grew up with me because she was so stunted in her mental growth. She grew up with me, so my friends were her friends, and like hanging out with us was her hangout. Because when she was in that marriage, she never got to experience going out with friends. She never got to experience having a night out. She never got to experience all of these things other women got to experience. And she grew up with me. But like also things like when I started to socialize scared her because like it never was a thing for her. So it was
Of
just
course.
like it was a big block in her head. And like you said, like here's the thing, right? Okay, I'm not dissing any culture, but Sri Lanka's culture is a mixed fruit. You know, there's no one set way. We've learned over the years, right? And creating a new culture or creating a culture within a culture, there's nothing wrong with it, as long as it's to the benefit of the whole country, you know, especially when it comes to mental health. Um,
Absolutely.
and and the biggest thing that I'm struggling with as well, because my Sinhalese and Tamil isn't the best. I'm a Hindu by birth, but my Sinhalese and Tamil isn't the best. And I'm just like, I'm trying to think in my head, like, I need to do more. Or, like you said, build an ecosystem of supportive people that come around to help us push this message out there. Because I completely agree with what you said before. Because even this, right? If this platform gives you more opportunity out there in terms of people who reach out to you or more clients or whatever that is, I'm glad, I'm grateful because we're giving that opportunity. I want other people to win, regardless of what speciality or what background they are. I want more people to win. But we have that ego ecosystem, especially within social media. It's just like, oh no, no, if I do this, they might get an upper hand over me, you know, or get more clients or get
That's
more
what it is.
followers.
It is.
It
It's
is, it
this
is. And trust
base
me,
based
I was
on
in,
like,
absolutely. And I was in food and travel reviews, right? So I was a quote unquote influencer. So
right.
like, I know the whole ego thing to it. I know how it worked. I was just like not about it. And that's one of the main reasons I don't even do it anymore because I'm just like, even though that gave me good money, you know, I don't
Of
make
course,
any money
yeah,
being a mental health advocate, but
absolutely.
I'm happy doing it because it's a good message. Like you said, intention, right? So I want to ask you as well, when it comes to people who still think it's taboo, right? You and I were both privileged in a sense. So I'm in Australia studying right now. You went to the US and studied. We have a home. We have people looking after us. We
Certain
have things in
privileges.
coming
Yes,
our way.
certain privileges. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But like, there's so many people who don't have those privileges, but also don't have the information behind it to make decisions, right? Especially when it comes to their mental health. What would your, if you had an audience of so many people who did not understand what mental health was, what would you tell them?
I would say, don't you realize what the most important thing in life is? What would you say it is? That's the first question I would ask them. I would say, what is the most important thing to you in your life? Right? What do you think the answer usually is? And you don't need to be Sinhalese, Tamil, Muslim, white, black, brown. It doesn't matter, right? It's always the same stuff. Happiness, right? Love, uh, money. But then I ask, money for what, right? So we all want certain things, but there's always an underlying reason as to why we want something, right? Okay. So money is the best example. Why do you want money? Okay, so that you can buy things. Why do you want to buy things? Because of comfort. Okay, why do you want to be comfortable? Because I feel good. Why do I feel good? Because I feel happy, and that's so important. And that's normal, right? It's normal to want to be happy, right? So there's always a drive within something. It's not always, it's never black and white. We have a joke in the mental health community, right, in the States. where we say nothing in life is black or white. It's just shades of gray, right? That's because nothing is 100% polarized. Nothing in life is, right? When you look at it, nothing is 100% absolute, right? We can talk about things, we can share ideas, but the fact is there's no set in stone thing that we can all agree upon. That's why we have so many diversity issues and all of that, right? And in a way, it's what makes us fabulous as well, the individuality, right? So I would say that, you know, think about the number one thing in your life, your priorities. A lot of people are not taught this, Sharon, right? Like, were you taught in school to prioritize mental health? No, I wasn't either. Were you taught in high school about, you know, kindness? We're talking about kindness, right? This is a kindness podcast. Where we said, oh, be kind, be kind. I mean, yes, there was a word called yapat and all of that, but that's more honesty and right. And we had the privilege of learning about religion and stuff, but we never really focused on the essence of it.
Empathy, right? Empathy, emotional intelligence.
What
There's
about
no degree for it.
Why not, right? And the only degrees that we have for it are the medicalized prescriptive versions. Become a psychiatrist, be a clinical psychologist, pass Bio 101, right? We all had to go through the real technical things that society looks and says, doctor, Hari, doctor. Yeah, doctor ki hone, Hari, right? So that is the attitude that we're dealing with, right? So this ego-driven, so even mental health is ego-driven, a lot of it, especially in this country. A lot of people are very possessive over their mental health stuff because they feel like someone's going to take it away from them, or they will lose credibility, they will lose clients. Very normal, but the fact is we can't grow. You can't grow by yourself, no, right? You have to initiate a connection for things to grow and grow and grow. This is something that a lot of us in our culture don't realize this. In order to get ahead in life, you have to have a community that is empowered. You can't do it yourself. No one can. No one in the history of mankind that has made it to the whatever top, I mean, that's all also just terminology, right? What the top means to you might be different from what the top means to me, right? But the superficial sense of success, you only reach it with the help of others, right? I know I didn't get this far because of myself only. Yes, I had something to do with it. I drove myself, I studied certain things, I had the certain personality, I did what I could do, I put myself out there, but someone helped me. So many people helped me along the way. So many people inspire me every single day, right? There are people like you, there are people like my friends, right? There are people I see on the street sometimes that are like so like amazing and kind and empathetic. There are people that I meet at like Coffee Bean, right? Right? It's amazing the kind of inspiration that you are surrounded with. It's up to you to kind of channel that and not feel like everyone is against you. And I know it's hard because fundamentally human beings are driven by fear, right? That's our most primal drive in the brain, prefrontal cortex, even though it's evolved, getting a little technical, but pretty much fear is the most like primitive emotion. So if you're driven by fear, which we normally are, you have to train yourself to be unafraid. It's a lot harder. It's a lot harder. So I would tell people, you know, if what matters in life generally is happiness and the safety of your families and the basic needs, Maslow, right? Maslow's hierarchy. How are you going to get it? How are you going to get them? How are you going to reach happiness? How are you going to make that money? Almost every one of those things are more accessible when you have good mental health. That's how I would start the conversation. Foundationally, you have to have the right attitude. Every context talks about mental health, mind you, right? We might not say indirectly, we wouldn't say like, oh, mental health issues, but we are saying, we're talking about motivation, right? We're talking about empowerment, right? Everything is related to mental health, self-esteem, confidence, right? Happiness, empathy,
security, all like everything. The thing is, people overthink it, thinking it's suicide, it's depression, that's mental health. But there's so much other things that are related to mental.
Everything's related to mental health. Sex is related to mental health. Okay, sexuality, sex, everything is. Drugs, music, right? I mean, everything has some level of mental health association involved because that's where consciousness lies. Human consciousness lies within the mind. Without consciousness, there would be no reality. There's nothing exists, right? So in order to fight the matrix that we're in, you need to understand that there is a matrix, right? And you need to start questioning that, and you need to start empowering it. It starts from you. It starts from you. It starts from me. It starts from all of us. Problem is, if the collective doesn't get together, and that's the problem we always face, governments will distract you with bullshit concepts like racism, right? It'll tell you, the problem is that guy down the street that's different religion from you, different ethnicity from you, they're the problem, right? But the real problem here is a lot deeper. It's this hierarchical systems that don't provide education for people in the right way, right? They use religion and they'll say, don't teach about certain things. They will use the venue to talk about, how homosexuality is bad, how divorces are bad, distraction. All these are cultural distractions from the real truth. What we really should be talking about is how do we learn to be better people for all of us. You can't function in Corona, I'm actually grateful for Corona because I hate that there are people that are dying. I hate that there are people that are really suffering. There are people that are actually sacrificing themselves, right, for this cause. But it has made one thing clear, and that is we are not invincible, right? Human beings are not invincible. We are so vulnerable. We have not got it all figured out, okay? And we screw up all the time, okay? Let's start being a little more humble, a little kind, right? If we were a little kinder towards everything, imagine the power that you can create, right? And the problem is we're too driven by other things. We're distracted. We're distracted by materialism. And here's the thing, I'm not perfect, okay? I'm not saying I'm not distracted by this. I'm also distracted. I'm also part of the problem, right? It's just that awareness helps you control stuff. I don't know whether you've gotten into minimalism recently, but minimalism is like really big now in the US in terms of lifestyle and mental health and, because what
minimalistic person.
Oh, yeah.
Super
Right.
minimal.
Yeah. It's so great because it's not telling you can't have nice things. It's not telling you can't buy what you want. They're just saying prioritize the important shit, right? What are the essentials? And minimalists have been talking about this since before Corona, okay? So then you don't get in debt. You have more money to spend on things that matter to you. It's an amazing philosophy when you think about it. And Buddhism actually talks about this too. Christianity kind of talks about it as well. I'm sure Islam does. All the religions kind of talk about the same things. All religion talks about kindness, but followers don't always follow that, right? They're busy talking about other stuff, right?
They twist the narrative.
Exactly.
As we all do,
Always. It's always about ego. So the number one enemy we have is the ego. Human ego, biggest enemy. Enemy number one is ego, right? And I think once you start educating, and we have had so many success rates, just within HEMAS, if you look at people and you say, what we're telling you is, if you prioritize mental health as happiness, so prioritize happiness. Everyone understands Satuta, no? Everyone understands Satuta. Everyone wants to be happy, right? No one wants to be sad, right? But the only way you cannot be sad, even Buddha said this, right? You have to stop being attached to things then. You have to stop thinking so much, stop that roller coaster of thoughts that you're having naturally, because every human being has thoughts and we can't help it. It's part of who we are. But we can quiet the conversation. That's where CBT comes in. So I'm Cbt Specialist. That's cognitive behavior therapy. Basically saying, you control your mind, you control your behavior, and then your life gets better, which is true. The stuff that you tell yourself really makes an impression, and it makes you act in certain positive ways or negative ways, depending on what you're saying. So if you're always saying, I'm a victim, I suck, guess what? You're going to suck, right? Because that's what you're telling yourself. So self-fulfilling prophecy, you're going to behave as if everyone hates you, you suck, right? And then your environment tells you, yeah, here you go, you suck, right? And then you start getting pissed off about it. And it's just a cycle of negativity. We need to break that cycle. And that's what mental health is about. It's about breaking that cycle of negativity.
Absolutely. And I think, like, just to sum it up, it's like self-awareness, self-acceptance, and self-reflection, right?
Yeah.
Like for me, for example, I've accepted the fact that I'm going to be home. I've also aware of the fact that, okay, I've had panic attacks in the shower and in my room, right? I have an emotional connection with those sectors of my room. I'm aware of that, right? Even though I'm aware of it, um, I had a panic attack last Friday in the shower while I was having a shower, right? But the thing is, the whole difference between all of these things are what is the action you're going to take, right? It's that thing where you're in a toxic relationship, but you choose to be in that toxic relationship, right? But are you going to take the action towards walking away from that toxic relationship? So the action that I've taken was go to therapy. So like when I first had my panic attack, it was I can't even remember how long it was, but I remember how excruciating it was, right? But after going for therapy, which was the action that I took, was learning about myself. And my therapist related my breathing to how I breathe in the gym and how I think about social media, because I spend a lot of time on social media. But she tailored to how she gave me advice based on what my life was, which is what a therapist or a counselor or psychologist does. Um, and based on that, I realized, okay, if I have to get better at handling my panic attacks, I have to take the action towards knowing where it's coming from. So she made me picture my lack of breathing as a rubber ball stuck in my diaphragm.
Mhm.
And as I breathe,
Visualization.
I picture that ball reducing, reducing, reducing. And from excruciating, it still is excruciating, but it's reduced the amount of time that I go through it, you know? So like acceptance that I'm in this area, being self-aware of the fact that it could happen because a few things could trigger me, like stress because of university and doing these live shows and everything, and like all the other things that are included in this little package called life. But also sitting down and self-reflecting and being with your thoughts is some of the hardest things you have to do, because those thoughts are freaking incredible beings to the fact that they will run you down, you know? But like you have to give yourself that time. So that now that people have that time, people are just
Exactly.
losing their minds. But at the same time, I'm glad they're losing their minds, because we have to go through that process of losing our minds as well, so we can gain our minds back.
There,
So
there's
that
sense
segues
in
me.
insanity. There's some sense.
There is sense in insanity. And the more you understand the sense in insanity, the more you know how to tame the insanity, right?
Beautifully said.
Um,
Beautifully said.
so that segues me to my next question. So you said that you're doing a few things to cope with your mental health. So
Mhm.
what are your, I'm not going to put a top three or top five, but like, what are your tips for anyone who's watching this now and watching this later, as to what they should do for their mental health during this time?
Okay, so I have a couple of things, and whenever I do a lecture or a seminar, I start with this because I think it's fundamental to start with, right? What is your basic vessel? What is the basic tool that we all have as humans? The body,
Bodies.
right? Exactly, right? And I think Farha said, love this energy. So I'm going to say she's onto something. It's all about energy, okay? It's all about energy. It's all about energy, right? So we are full of energy here. How do you reignite energy? Best way is to move your body, right? How do you move your body? There are many ways. Exercise is one venue, right? You can exercise. You can do yoga. You can stretch, right? You can just dance around, or you can headbang for all you rock fans, fellow rock fans like me. You can just jam out, you know.
Same here.
There you go.
We have a lot of similarities.
There you go, right? It is an avenue of putting it out there. To channel energy, you have to create movement. So I always prefer the word movement. I never use the word exercise anymore because I feel like that discriminates. Because there are people like, oh, I don't like going to the gym and I hate. I'm like, okay, no. I'm not talking about exercise in the gym. I'm talking about all kinds. I'm talking about swimming. I'm talking about, do you like tennis? Do you like punching something that is not going to hurt you? Or, like just move, there are so many ways to move. And you have to understand that in order to make this work well, it has to start with this. It's your body. So I start with yoga. right? So I wake up in the morning, practically the very first thing I do is I stretch and I do some yoga. Why? Because the moment you wake up, there's this mind block that makes you sort of makes you want to stay in one place. And this is why a lot of people with depression, right? They talk about, not being able to move, where they feel so drained. They haven't even done anything, but they feel drained. That's because your energy has basically dissipated because your mind is telling you nothing's worth it, right? So if your body moves, automatically you're creating energy, right? That sends a signal to your brain saying, guess what? She must be okay, no? He must be all right because, hey, he's moving. That means he's all right. Then you feel an increase of serotonin and dopamine, right? Where the natural neurotransmitters in your brain, and you feel much better. That's why, exercise is the natural neurotransmitter, the natural way, the natural drug, right, that you need to feel good. So I start with yoga. Yoga is so powerful. You don't need to do yoga, okay? Please don't ever think that
Anything that works for you.
Exactly. There's no one size fits all. I'm just saying moving the body has really helped me. And I know throughout research and statistics and clients and testimonials, working out does help. Okay. Movement. So let's say movement. Next, what I do is I tend to talk to people that I trust, that I value, so like friends, my mom, my husband, my family members, people that I admire, right? Yes, dancing, yes. Yes, I'm always dancing. I can't help it. It's a problem.
No, it's not.
And I just find this is very therapeutic to me. This is why I decided to become a shrink, is because I just love talking to people and listening to them. It's very therapeutic to me. So when I have someone call me up and say, Shanelle, I'm dealing with this, I listen. And you know what? It helps me. It helps me to listen. I don't necessarily always need to be talking. This is the thing. People always think that as a shrink, as a psychologist, as like you need to do all the talk. No, actually, the fundamental thing is you listen. You don't talk. You talk only when absolutely necessary, but otherwise you just listen, right? So listening to what other people have to say really helps me. Helping other people. So this is why I love helping people, because it's automatic serotonin increase, right? If you really want to be technical, it's helping your serotonin and your dopamine increase, right? That's why we love helping people. Another thing I do is I like reading. I know, kind of old-fashioned, right, in this day and age, but
Something that I've been trying my hardest to get into is reading, because I've seen some of the smartest people, some of the best conversations I've had was after I read a book or after I have gained more insight. Because the thing is, yes, I'm a more audible learner, but audible things, you can sit and do mundane things and you can listen, you can just chill and listen. Reading, you have to make the effort to concentrate. So that itself activates your brain. So it's not old school at all.
Describe the actual scientific ideology behind it. So the reason why reading is so powerful is because it slows down your brain. You can't mindlessly, you watch a movie, it's like you don't have to really focus, right? You just go on the train, you're dazed, right? But reading requires actual okay, that's a word, and your brain has to slow down, right? And it has to get the meaning of stuff. It needs to understand, comprehend. So it's actually a kind of therapy, because it's slowing your thought process. It's making you focus, live in the present. There's nothing more present than reading a book, let me tell you, right? Because it drags you into that moment. It's like a form of meditation. So for me,
I'm struggling because I'm someone who's just always on the move, and now when I have to sit down and read a book, I'm just but I'm getting there. I'm getting there slowly but surely.
I get it. Just be passionate about what you're reading. So it really helps if you really like the topic. The problem is a lot of people who don't like reading, the first book they read is a crappy book that they didn't want to read. You must do your research and figure out what is the thing I really want to know about. And then you sit down with that first book that's gotten a New York Times bestseller rating. And so you know that the public in general really likes it. So high likelihood you will like it. You know what I mean? And you go for it. And it's really powerful. So reading really helps me. Also, doing little rituals. believe it or not, it might sound really weird to some people, making my coffee in the morning, wow, monumental therapeutic regime, right? I wake up in the morning and I do my yoga, right? I take a shower and then I go downstairs, French press. Like you take the beans, you ground them, you like put them in the French press, you pour the water, really stay present. You feel freaking awesome. I'm serious. It doesn't have to be coffee though. It can be anything. Little rituals, right? For some people, cleaning is very powerful. So as you said very early on, it's all about action, right? This is what we struggle with as mental health advocates and professionals. It's hard to get the client to initiate an action. But action is what is going to set the bar for you to recovery, right? For your recovery and to get even better. Because without action, there's no movement. So it's all about taking that first step. Working out, making your coffee, doing yoga, talking to someone. Guess what? It all requires effort, right? So I'm in a constant stage of kind of shifting into actions, and the action doesn't have to be strenuous, right? It could be meditation. It could just be breathing. People don't understand the power of good breathing. Most of us don't breathe well, okay? We're breathing because our bodies are so good at it.
We're not actively breathing.
Exactly. So it has to be that what they call this soft belly breathing, right? Where you inhale really powerfully and you distend. So your abdomen gets filled in with all that air and you let it out through a good breath, right? Increases oxygen in the brain, makes you feel good again, relaxes you. So stress, so the brain is not like, oh my God, fight or flight. Oh my God, she's about to die now. No, it's saying, she's okay. She's safe. She's safe. So then you feel relaxed. You don't feel like you're under threat. You've been through anxiety and panic attacks, right? You know how important it is to breathe, right? It's because of that oxygen influx. So I find breathing really powerful. I find initiating anything that requires music to me is like my Zen, you know. I will put on Nirvana. I will put on Radiohead. These are my therapists, okay? Some Oasis, you know, it's awesome. You know, if you're a fan of music, it can really help because there are studies that show that when your brain has all these brain waves, the sound waves actually help to correct it. That's why when you hear something beautiful, you feel like you're in another world, right? So absolutely. Music, simple things, you know, this doesn't require, you know, a lot of training, right? You just bring awareness, as you said, and you accept it. You accept what's happening. You have to accept collectively, as a conscious group of people, we need to accept what's happening to us. Our freedom has been taken away, right? A lot of things that we want to do, we can't do. You know, you and I are social people. We love hanging out with people, right? We love talking face to face, preferably, right?
Sometimes a bit too much.
Right? When it becomes bad, right? But then again, now it's time to challenge yourself. So I was telling a bunch of people in a seminar, I was saying, you know, if you really are worried about what's happening, figure out what you want to be at this time of crisis, right? So figure out what your purpose is. When a crisis hits, who are you? Who are you? What is your narrative? Are you going to be the really scared, pissed off, frustrated, angry, impatient person? You could be that. I mean, hey, right? Whatever works. But you could also be the empathetic, positive, helpful, you know, creative. You know, how many people, you know, Yashodhara creates art, you know. I love writing personally. You know, my friend Imanti, she writes, you know, like we all have a thing where, you know, we go to through a creative platform. Put something out there, you know, paint a picture, you know, write a song, sing a song, share it with people. Just make it active and figure out who you want to be. Do you want to be a beacon of light, or do you want to just add to the darkness and the panic and the freaking out and the, you know, there are two things there. We all know the world is kind of in a bad place. We get it. We understand that, but we have to accept it, right? And I always ask this for people that are like really negative about Corona. I'm like, so you mean to tell me that before Corona, You were a fabulous person. You never got pissed off. You were very happy, satisfied. You thanked God every day. You were very grateful for all your friends, for all your families, for all your jobs. You were so happy, right? And they're like, no. So clearly, not much has changed for most of the people. It's just that Corona is like, here you go. Here, you suck, okay? You don't have control, okay? You're human. So it's really funny. Like my husband made a really good observation. He's a doctor. He was saying, it's really funny. The entire human race has been called into question by a tiny thing, like a virus. Like it's you can't even see the bloody thing, and it's already controlled us all. So size does not matter in that context, right? You have to pay attention to that. It's not about how much power you have. It's not the status. We're all in it. It doesn't matter what religion, class, whatever it is. It's hitting you whether you like it or not. So who are you going to be? So if a disease doesn't discriminate, why do we discriminate against each other all the time? Why are we always so hard? Why is it hard to be kind? Why isn't kindness sexy, right? We talk about sexiness all the time. Why can't we talk about how sexy kindness is,
Absolutely. Something I say all the time.
Kindness is sexy. Because
absolutely.
It's an amazing thing. And I think we just need to change the narrative. We need to make it cool. We need to make it hip. And the hope is in the young generation, right? I love the old people. The old generation is great. I'm, getting into my late 30s now. I'm just I understand, you're growing up, but the fact is we need the younger generation and the millennials, all of us, to get together and push this forward.
Absolutely.
And that's what drives me. It drives me that I have a purpose in this. It drives me that as a mental health professional, I have a duty to show up for the community as well as myself, right? And I'm still figuring out my shit. I'm still trying to figure out how to manage it. There are days when I'm like, oh my God, can I please go to Park Street right now? Please. Please, can I please have that glass of Pinot now? No. And, we all have our moments. We're human. But you have to remind yourself, ground yourself, right? As your therapist says, you have to kind of visualize, it needs to be tangible. So it could be like a photograph. It could be a journal. It could be a picture of a loved one. It could be anything that you can hold on to that reminds you why you need to be grateful, why you need to be happy of your current situation in your own way, because that's the only thing that's going to help. Being negative is normal, okay? I always tell this to people that think, oh, I need to be happy, Shanelle, I need to be positive. I'm like, no. Actually, being negative is normal. Being happy is weird. But the fact is, being happy is what makes us, feel good. And we need more of that because there's enough negativity in our lives. There's enough negativity in the community. So let's train ourselves to be positive, even though what's normal is what's bad. That's why negativity needs to be accepted. Because if we keep denying
it's part of the process of becoming more wholesome, if that makes sense.
I agree. Without the darkness, there can be no light, right? I always look at it that way. I think if bad things happen, it's because, hey, if not, we would have no idea what the good looks like. We'd have no idea what it looks like.
Absolutely.
And so
no, I completely agree. Shanelle, it has been an absolute honor. I just want to say that this conversation doesn't end here. I would love to have you back on when everything settles down, so we can record this and make a really good talk about this, because I feel like people like you have a lot to offer. And like you said, it's about building that ecosystem of supporting rather than ecosystem of ego. So this live stream is ending in 25 seconds. So I'm going to call you again so I can get your outro. Okay. So I'm going to start a new one. Just give me a second.
Thank you so much, Aaron. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I want you back. Join again. Join again.
Okay.
Okay.